Hello, everybody. I'm Anshu. I'm a DE and at IBM in the financial sector. My expertise is taking companies through digital transformation, focusing on cloud computing, application modernization, and AI. So welcome. We are all excited to have you here, and welcome to the Asian American Woman in Tech webinar series, one entitled The Path to Becoming an Influential Woman in Technology. Our session today is hosted by Asian American Business Development Center. The Asian American Business Development Center is a nonprofit organization established in 1994. It assists Asian Americans in strengthening their capacity to compete in the mainstream market, to expand business opportunities, and to promote recognition of Asian American businesses, business contributions in this economy. We thank our series partner, Cisco, and the webinar series is sponsored by Bank of America, Hennessy, Jpmorgan Chase. This is the first webinar of the Asian American Woman in Technology webinar series. The second webinar is scheduled on 21st October with the name Meet the Asian Millennials in Tech, a new breed of entrepreneurs. We want them. And the third webinar is scheduled on October 28th with the theme, The Evolving of Technology Continues, and what is the future of technology in 2025? Now let's come to today's webinar session. This brings together female executives and other impact makers in technology to share insightful thoughts and experiences as they lead game-changing businesses that make the world a better place. There is no better place for female leaders to play critical roles in redefining the future by building a world culture that embraces, encourages, and grooms women to become those future leaders. So go women in tech. Today in our panel discussion, we will discuss best practices, experiences, words of wisdom these women, which you see on the panel here, women trailblazers, as I call them, will give us who are leading the strategy and future of IT in various companies. We are joined today by Luan Cox, the founder and CEO of FinMkt, Maggie Chen-Jones, the founder and CEO of Tenshey Inc., and Sophia Leong, head of governance, risk and control for cybersecurity and technology controls for Jpmorgan Chase. As far as agenda, we will start the keynote speech by Luan Cox, followed with panel discussion and Q&A session, and close with the flute performance by Mitzi Nonanka. I'm looking forward to that. So let's start with the keynote with Luan Cox. Luan is a founder and CEO of Fintech, a best-in-class multi-lender platform and point of sale solution that has processed billions in loan applications volume since launching in 2016. Before that, she had held many executive positions. She has received a lot of awards in fintech world. Actually, as early as September of this year, she joined the prestigious list of female leaders, being named as one of the top 25 leaders in financial technology of 2020. That's impressive, Luan, by the financial technologist report. So over to you, Luan, for the keynote.
Thank you so much, Anshu, and it's such a pleasure and honor to be here with all of you. I only wish that we could be in person, but one day soon. I want to dedicate this conversation to our mothers. My mother is hands down the strongest Asian American woman I know. In sacrificing everything for me to be here in America, she taught me through her actions and some harsh words here and there when I got out of line, what it takes to be truly successful and happy in this life. Focus, passion, hard work, and to never, ever give up. And most importantly, she taught me to love everyone and always give and never take. Always give, never take. We'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. My story begins in 1970 in South Vietnam, the height of the war. My mother, the third oldest of 13 brothers and sisters, met my father while working at the American Officers Club, Major Marvin Bedford Cox. And she got pregnant with me. And when I was 2.5 years old, my mother made the decision to leave everything behind. Her budding singing career, she was the second best singer in Vietnam, wanted to be the next Madonna of Vietnam, left her family, her country, for one reason, so that I could be here and have a life. Because kids like me, back then in Vietnam, being half Vietnamese, half American, we were considered lower than dirt, used as slaves, hidden underground. Nothing like the life I would have here. So my 23-year-old mother not only gave me life, but she saved my life. I don't remember Vietnam very well, but I do remember the day we arrived at Schofield Barracks Army Base in Honolulu in 1973. And that's where the lessons of my mother began. Focus. Somehow I felt I needed a purpose as soon as possible, that I was here for a reason. I knew my mother was a fish out of water, no English, no friends, plenty of prejudice. I needed a job, a way to give back to my mother one day and keep her safe. Passion and hard work. She taught me that it needed to feel not like work, that I needed to love it, to work tirelessly for it, and to never give up, because it is true. You only fail if you give up. I knew that I would get knocked down. Some days it would be painful, but to always get back up stronger than when I fell. And finally, give, do not take. My mother would say, Luan, the more you give, the more the world will give back to you when you don't expect it. And she was right. Our mothers are always right, aren't they? By 5 years old, I had my first job. That lasted until I was 17. Tennis. Tennis appealed to me as being an entrepreneur does today. Tennis is a lonely sport, as is being an entrepreneur and a CEO. Tennis requires one to not only be physically in shape, but more importantly, mentally, intellectually, and emotionally strong. But unlike team sports, and like being an entrepreneur or a CEO, you're all alone. And I worked very hard at my job. I worked out every day, 7 days a week, traveling for tournaments that my mother would take me to, becoming nationally ranked. But at 17, my mother taught me the lesson of do what you love and it won't feel like work. Because at 17, it started to feel like work for the first time in 12 years. And that's when I decided I needed a new job, a new focus, a new passion that would last for the rest of my life. So I started my second job, which I still have today. I watched the movie Wall Street and decided finance. I want to be a stockbroker. And by the way, if you've ever seen Wall Street, there are no female stockbrokers. There are only assistants and what they used to call secretaries. But it's also a solo sport, and I was pretty good in math, just like tennis. I could control my destiny. A few years later, in the mid-90s, this new thing called the internet became available to normal people, and I was entranced. I immediately fell in love with the idea of marrying finance and technology. We call it FinTech now. I would go on to build 4 FinTech companies, including helping to build a company called Quote.com. We were the first ones to offer stock quotes on the internet, believe it or not, and everybody thought we were crazy. I've most often been the only female in the room, like many of you, working in finance and technology, and it's not been easy, but it's always made me happy. And thanks to my mother's lessons, I have a full life, 2 beautiful sons. I take care of my mother. I'm truly blessed. So let's get back to this way of living that is give, do not take. It doesn't just mean being a good person, donating, contributing to the world, leaving it in a better place than you found it. It means much more for us as strong, powerful, ambitious Asian American women. It means to always be aware that life will be tougher for you. People will assume you're always okay, that you are respectful, appreciative, content with what you've been given. It also means that we will need to always give more to get what we want in order to be happy in our work, our careers. For us, blood, sweat, and tears is table stakes, the minimum entry fee to be recognized, but it's not going to be enough. I want you to give and never take. Give everything you have in your heart, mind, and soul. You must be more creative, more prepared, more committed, more confident, more generous, more understanding, more hardworking than your colleagues, male or female. And never, ever take what others think you are worthy of. Because if you take what they think you deserve, you will never find true happiness. You won't realize your dreams or the dreams of your mother. Give all of yourself to your passion. And if you haven't found your passion, find it quickly. Life is short. And I promise you, because you have been blessed with the long history of the strength of our Asian mothers, grandmothers, sisters, you have a secret weapon. Use it and go out and create your destiny. Go out and build something great. And because you never took, but rather gave, happiness and true success will be yours. I promise. Thank you for having me.
Amazing, amazing, Luan. This was so inspirational. See, I took some really takeaways. Give and do not take. Never give up. Do what you want, your passion. I think you touched very important points, and our heritage as far as, I remembered my, whoever I am today is because of my mother. So it's beautiful. Thank you so much for that inspirational speech. Now let's go to the next agenda item. And now I would like to invite the panelists to introduce themselves. Let's start with Maggie Chan-Jones, the founder and CEO of Tenshey. Maggie, over to yourself.
Thanks, Anshu. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here with you. And Luann, it was just such a wonderful story and great lessons. So a little bit about myself. I founded Tenshey, a mission-driven company that focused on lifting women and people of color into leadership position in the workplace after spending 20 years in the technology sector. And I'll give you just 3 things about me. Personally, I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and I came to the US when I was 14 years old. My mother was brave enough that let me come to the United States by myself to live with some relatives that I had only met a few times in my lifetime. And the reason was she knew education is going to be a key for my future. And even though I was the only child, she was like, you got to go because this is your future. So I definitely very, very much resonate with the story, Luann, that you shared. And the other thing that I want to share with you is I spent 20 years in technology before I founded my own company. I was at Microsoft, I was at SAP, I was the first woman to become the global chief marketing officer at SAP. And it was throughout my time in the technology sector, always, many of the times being the only woman in the room or being the only people of color in the room that really got me passionate about how do we help organizations and teams to build that high performance diverse team, because we need the inclusiveness, we need the belonging so that we can all be the best that we can be. And then the third one was, the reason why I founded Tenshey 3 years ago was, following my passion, like Luann was saying, that my passion is to help the next generation leaders to grow. So in addition to that, I also serve on 2 company boards, 2 public board, 1 public board and 1 private company board, so that I can continue my work in helping organizations to become more diverse in addition to what I do at Tenshey. So it's a great time to be here with you, and I can't wait for our conversation to begin.
Fantastic, fantastic. It's so impressive. About all your work you have done, Maggie. Now over to Sophia Leong. Sophia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And now I know why I'm here with Luan and Maggie. So thrilled. And we have more similarities than I guess the panelists realize. So firstly, my name is Sophia Leong. I'm a managing director at Jpmorgan Chase. I'm in the technology division, and I head up a function within our cybersecurity and technology controls department called Governance, Risk, and Controls. So similar to Luan and Maggie, I am also an immigrant. I was born in Hong Kong. My mom as well and my parents gave up everything to come here so that we can finish our education. I did finish my education here in the U.S., but then I started work in the U.S. for a bank. Financial services IT was very hot in the 90s. And I got a 3-month assignment to Hong Kong. And I have to say my parents really didn't understand why we came for the American dream and I would go and take an assignment. It was supposed to be 3 months. It turned out to be 20 years. And my kids were born in Hong Kong. And in fact, I just moved back with Jpmorgan Chase back to New York. So it's a bit of a zigzag for me around the world, but what an exciting career technology offers all of us. And also the opportunities that I've been afforded working in this field. So I totally embrace what Luan said about passion, and that's what really has driven me in technology, a career that I didn't expect to be so exciting and what I wake up every day thinking about. So also very honored to be here with all of you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sophia. This is an amazing panel. It's interesting. We all are immigrants at one stage or the other. Perfect. So let's start the panel discussion. Before starting the panel discussion, a few housekeeping notes. Please use the WebEx Q&A function to post your questions and they will get answered. So first question. This is to all of you, and please, I'll direct it to Luan first. Across the globe, there is increasing awareness that women leaders are critical for organizational success. Now, to redefine leadership to include Asian American women, which qualities and experiences would become the most valuable? Please share one of your personal experience as you've been doing. So over to you, Luan.
Thank you, Anshu. Well, you guys now know my entire life story, so I won't take up too much time. But I will say that yes, it is very exciting that finally women leaders are being recognized as superior and is certainly equal in many ways. For Asian American female leaders and us sort of being more recognized, I think it really falls more onto us. And I kind of talked about it in my keynote. We need to be more vocal. We have, I believe that because of our culture, we have skills and attitudes about certain things and how to go about things, whether it's from a respectful manner or from a very detailed perspective, and there's a perception of us that I think there's some good in that and bad. So I guess my suggestion for the room, for the folks in the audience is to, step up to the plate, raise your hand more, don't be in the corner. I personally have been in many meetings where there may be an Asian woman and she's sitting there scribbling on a notebook. Her business card is not even in the, we've all been there, right? Stop that. Sit up straight, demand a voice, and use all the skills that you have, because like I said, you are as good, if not better, than anyone else in that room.
Yeah, agree totally with you. Over to you, Maggie. Give us your experience.
Yeah, I really believe in really leveraging your strength. And as Asian women, one of the key strengths that we have is being collaborative. And I can tell you in the different organizations that I've worked at and, continue to work with, collaboration is such a key aspect for everything from big strategic decisions to, how do you work with your project teams. So take advantage of that strength that we have on trying to figure it out. How do you drive that win-win scenario? Give you a quick example. Someone that I've been mentoring who was new to a Fortune 100 company. And one of the key things that she said, she was like, Maggie, I came from a startup environment. Now all of a sudden I'm in a 100,000 people organization. Like, how do I navigate? And one of the things that I said was, well, have you actually started talking to people about, what their goals are? Because especially in a big organization, your goals may not be the same as the people you work with. So understanding what are their goals and how do they align with yours and how do you get to that win-win is going to make things so much easier for you in driving the agenda that you want to set out to do. And that was such a light bulb moment because, when she was working in a startup, everyone knows everybody's goals and usually they are completely aligned. But in bigger organizations, those decisions become more complex. So leverage that collaborative skills.
Yeah, no, that's a great insight, Maggie. That's a great insight. Sophia, yours?
Yeah, for me, certainly, I think many of us will know that, especially women on a team, tends to be the people who tends to, close issues and like bring the team together and follow up. And I think as women, though, we need to better articulate the things that we think we're ready for, taking some risk and what Luan said about, speaking up. I can tell you from a personal experience standpoint, although nobody who worked with me would think I'm not assertive, but by nature, I'm actually an introvert and left up to my own devices. I sit in my room and read all day, right? But, many times I see in my career that I've been up in a situation where they're looking for the head of the team. And I'm eventually up, peers with a guy. And I've been told that unless I speak up and tell my management that I want that role, I'm ready for that role, and I'm capable of the role, that I won't get it. And I can tell you it happens so often that, the men across the organization will have no challenge. And I found myself once in a while not wanting to get into that situation where I felt like I'm competing with someone who I've worked with for so long. But over the years, I think I'm glad that I'm getting over that. I've started managing people who have much more experience than I do because I bring something different by way of leadership. So I think it's a little bit about risk-taking and just not being afraid to take on new roles that we'll see more women in leadership positions.
I totally agree. And I have this, I usually, when I mentor people or even my kids, I tell them, if you don't ask, you won't get it. It's very simple. Very well said. So, okay, over to our next question. What were the most significant inhibitors or challenges on the path of becoming an executive? How did you overcome them? And what were your learning experiences? Let's start with Maggie here.
Sure. So I think going back to what Luann and also Sophia said, speaking up, right? And because so many times women, kind of like sitting at the corner, not speaking up in meetings, or even when they were speaking up, like their voices like coming in. And so being able to do that is very important. So I thought I'd share 2 hacks for you. One hack is something to help you to get over that challenge is in every meeting that you attend, that you participate, in the first 10 minutes, say something. Whether it's asking a question or making a statement, that would allow you to build those muscles so that over time it becomes muscle memory, so that you no longer have to worry about, am I going to say something? Am I not? Oh, somebody else just said something that I was going to say, right? In the first 10 minutes, do that. And what I usually like to do is before the meeting, I write down all the key things what are the key objectives, what are the key points that I want to make so that you don't have to think about them when you walk into that meeting. The second thing, when you're in a room with a lot of folks and, in tech, primarily a lot of men still, one of the times that I remember we were preparing for a board meeting and I was just starting to tell my colleagues, my marketing plan. And like within the first minute, everybody was jumping up with questions. And I was like, hey guys, give me 5 minutes. Let me share my story. Let me share my pitch. And after 5 minutes, if you guys still have questions, please jump in. And I remember my boss actually said, you're right, Maggie, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to use them proportionally. I think really creating the space for yourself is very critical today.
I agree totally in agreement with you. And it's always sometimes you have not even started the meeting. You have not even, everybody is like talking and guys, listen first and then ask your question. And I think what you're also trying to say, pushback, that is important. We need to learn how to push back, which
Absolutely.
I learned it the hard way actually myself. Okay, perfect. Over to you, Luan.
So first of all, I think probably a lot of the women in the room are introverts as well. I'm like Sophia. Believe it or not, I am an introvert. But the good news is introverts make the best extroverts, right? I think it's proven because we're more sincere, we're more thoughtful. So I would say if you have if you are an introvert, which I think many in tech are, especially females, that's a good thing. Try to turn it out for the positive. I think in terms of my career, and I've worked for large companies and I've started companies because I've sold companies to bigger companies. So I've seen a lot of it. But I remember being very young and being in a room of men and not even being acknowledged. Like literally, I'm not in that room. But I have the title and I have the brain, but I am not even there. And that's really, especially a young person who's ambitious, hard to grasp. It still happens today, sadly, not as bad, but it still happens. And, I would say that this goes back again to my speech, be more prepared. You have to be more prepared. You have to be smarter than everyone else because, to Maggie's point, speaking up in the first 10 minutes, for example, you don't want to just speak up. It's better to not say anything than say something stupid, right? But if you marry Maggie's advice with mine in terms of being prepared and knowing what you want to accomplish and knowing how you want to be viewed, then you're going to get respect and you're going to start talking more and more in the meeting. The other thing is too, for me, challenges as an entrepreneur and for those entrepreneurs in the room, raising capital is very hard for women still. Depending on the statistic you look at, it's, in the 5 to 7% range of venture capital goes to women-led businesses. I fortunately have been able to raise capital because I've used my introvertedness to be a really good salesperson because I'm really sincere and passionate about what I'm doing. And I've raised a lot of capital with no men sitting beside me. My male co-founder, who is also Asian, Indian, has never had to go into a VC meeting. I've never had to sit in front of a computer and code. So it's a good marriage. But yeah, so if you know that is going to be a challenge, but with all the advice that the panel's giving, one that you can overcome, and the world is certainly changing.
Oh, perfect. So you're raising a lot of capital. That sounds very encouraging and interesting. I've always dreamt of opening a company and never could get myself open one. Perfect. Okay, Sophia, yourself?
For myself, I think there are two things I've observed, and I'm with Luan on you always have to be better. So the fact is, while things are getting better, there are still many, many stereotypes that we continue to live around. One of them is that, when men exhibit emotions, they're often seen as being passionate or authoritative or, just powerful. When women do it, though, you and I know that we're often labeled as being emotional. So I think you have to practice making a point without coming off as emotional. And I spend a lot of time making sure that, my reputation and, my brand is appropriate such that when I speak up around an issue, I'm not just being emotional. I think that's a first one that I see. And the second one is, how to overcome this issue of confidence. Recently I was on a panel with secondary students, 16-year-old. They think I have a 16-year-old boy. I tell him to study. He said he doesn't need to study, right? He has all the confidence in the world. So I think the kids or the students are generally very confident. And I was talking to these 16-year-olds and asked, like, what's your dream? What do you think about the future? And the boys wouldn't stop talking, right? I want to be my father. I want to be, someone said, I want to be a journalist, and everybody laughed at him, right? And no girl spoke up. And finally I said, no girls speak up. I'm not leaving the room. And a 16-year-old girl finally stood up and said, I want to be a doctor. And I was like, oh, great, my work is done. And she broke down in tears immediately. And she said, but I have no confidence. I've never seen a woman with such confidence. And I was flabbergasted because it's the year, actually it was last year, so 2019. And like, you do not imagine that 16-year-old girls feel like they have no confidence to be something 10 years away. And so I think about, the aspects of try not to let your have confidence and try to be, more deliberate about what you're after, and also just not let other people label you, whether it's emotional, whether, you're whatever these tags that you will get, just studying while you're working. So I think over time, that's two issues that I see, and I try to encourage people to overcome them.
Yeah, that's so well said, Sophia, because it's interesting. I want to make a point here. I used to think when I came 25 years ago to this country that, okay, it's me only, and, I'm new here and in this whole IT men-dominated world. And now when I go to and talk to young girls in colleges and universities, it's the same thing. And I'm saying, why haven't we changed so much in these 25 years? Like, I won't say it's at the same level, but I'm a little bit shocked at and they need role models. They really need role models that if these women could do it, why can't we do it? So it's very well said, very well said. So let's get to the next question. Over to you itself. Megatrends are huge. Transformative global forces drive that shape the future by having far-reaching impact on business, society, culture, people, economies, and environment. What new capabilities and innovation and mindset is needed to overcome these challenges and manage threats and exploit opportunities? Share us some of your current megatrend challenges.
I'll take that one.
Yeah.
Well, of course, top of mind for us right now, I think the most common megatrend that we see is virtual working for everyone, right? For a company like Jpmorgan, I think we're fortunate with a workforce of 200,000+ employees. We have capability previously for a large portion of the workforce to work from home, but we've never had some portion like traders to work from home for a long time. And so when COVID hit, I think we had to spin out work from home capabilities for traders that highly regulated, all these somewhat technical barriers we have to overcome. But we can get past the technical challenges. But now I think we're getting into the longer term kind of changes associated with working from home. So how do you think about when teams don't see each other, they don't get that coffee, that coffee machine, whatever, kind of time. And when we do team building, it's all virtual. How do you build team relationships and trust, right? And I think those are so important on a team that in a large company, while you can continue to use things like video conferencing to see each other, it's really not the same. And so we're thinking hard now about, how to critically focus on continue to cultivate the culture of an organization, make sure we build the right, teamwork, relationships, and respect that are so important in a large corporation. So I think some of these are going to be challenges for the future.
No, definitely, definitely. And people, actually, a lot of companies are working that even coming back to office. What will it be different? How will we go about doing it so that when, I hope we don't hit another kind of pandemic, how are we going to deal with it? Because it was tough. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for that insight. So the next question, Luan, to yourself. The biggest force that will shape the entire world over the next decade will be exponential changes in technology. And as you being the technologist, what is your advice in identifying the skills required and how to acquire them to meet the business and working needs? In other words, how best can you prepare for the work for the future?
Well, I personally think that this is an incredibly exciting time to be alive in technology. And I just wish I was 20 years younger. I think in terms of the skills and the expertise, because of technology, information is everywhere. So not being informed or educated or, prepared is your fault. There is so much information available about current technologies. Now, that's easy to read and learn about. What's hard and what's required and I encourage all of us as future and current leaders, women leaders, is to be creative, to think outside of the box, right? Think about where the technology can evolve to, because the men do that. Men do it every day, and then they start a company and they get funded with their flip-flops and hat and being dropped out of Stanford. Meanwhile, a woman with a master's from Columbia can't get a dollar. So we need to change that, and the way we do it is by being smarter, faster, tougher, and more creative. So that applies whether you're working in a large company and you're wanting to climb the corporate ladder, think outside of the box, go beyond in terms of your intellectual analysis. But also, there's a time because of cloud-based technologies, and we talked about this in our prep, that AI has been around since the 70s, but now all of a sudden AI is this fresh thing. Well, that's because we have this thing called cloud now, and that is allowing fintech companies and all types of companies to grow up overnight. When I first helped start Quote.com, we had to call Sun Microsystems to get them to give us servers. We're a startup. We had $40,000 boxes sitting in our garage just to get a thing up on the internet, right? Now you just go and then boom, you got a company. So that's huge. So now there are no barriers to entry because of technology. Now it's really just about how creative women can be in their thought process around the future and our place in the future. Because to your point, Anshu, hasn't anything changed in 25 years, right? The dream should be of us is in 10 years, I would love to see Asian American women at the tops of all companies, right? Right now we're seeing the non-Asian women there, which is great. We have a female CEO of Citibank now, right? I mean, it's amazing. All kinds of things are happening. But 10 years from now, I'd love to see the Asian American women leading.
Amen. Well said. Amen. And this is very interesting. You mentioned I'm very passionate about technology because I come from a technology company, and I have written for these cell phones here. I have written firmware for these cell phones in Bell Northern Research. So we were one of the inventors of these cell phones, and as you said, it's so important. Even it's not just in the technology field. Each and every industry is going to change, whether it is finance, whether it is retail, each and everybody, as my kids will be laughing at me, everybody is going to code, whether it is a financial analyst or it is a retail person or a doctor, because the technology is going to be woven into the way we are working. Like AI. AI is nothing until you don't know business. How are you doing the modeling? How are you predicting the markets and so on and so forth? So very well said. So technology is going to rule. I'm so happy about that. Okay, next question, Sophia, to yourself. Intersectionally, race and gender, we talked about it, causes like Asian Americans to bump against the double pane glass. Ceiling in tech, men dominate the industry. AI systems, even if you see like Amazon Alexa or Apple Siri, among others, have been founded and show gender bias. And this is not an accident, so we need more women in technology. So what are the strategies for young Asian American women to learn, grow, thrive in the tech? And what are the corporations like Jpmorgan Chase doing to reduce gender bias? Sophia, to yourself.
Thank you. As I mentioned previously, I think, despite the environment overall getting better in some areas, I'm very proud Jpmorgan Chase, our group CIO is female, leading a 52,000 person organization in technology, and she's a great role model for us all. But overall, when you look at, students, secondary students self-selecting out of what they think are really technical areas because it's harder, or the analysts on the team who told me recently I was having open office hours, and this female on the team of like 12 boys or men, sorry, who said that she didn't fit in, and she was just describing how she felt like she didn't fit in, and maybe she should look for another role. And I kept asking, what is it that you can't do, or what haven't you achieved? And she couldn't say it. So I went to her manager and said, like, you know, how's she performing? And he told me she's great, but you know, she's the only one who communicates well and get things done. So we put her in the BA roles, the business analyst roles. And so she thinks she's not technical because she's spending too much time doing this other stuff that first, no one else is doing. And second, like the men in her group said they're not good at. So then she doesn't think she's good at what they're doing. And so she feels like she doesn't belong, but there were no capability issues with her, etc. So one thing I realize is we have to encourage women not to self-select out so quickly before you give it a real chance, right? A lot of things, until you try and you work at it, you won't get great. And secondly, I think this part about, you know, focusing on your strength. I think the other panelists also talked about like developing your skills. So I think many females in particular and Asians are great at problem solving, critical thinking. They're going to be key no matter what technology is out there, right? The great reality of the future is technology will only make many of what we're doing now easier. However, you still need to problem solve. You still need to think critically, and you should hone in on those skills and figure out what adds value to your business, right? And then start to develop the other skills, kind of like for me, for instance, being more assertive, asking for what I need, right? Putting my position forward without feeling threatened or scared, you know, and just get past what you're shying away from, taking some risks in those areas and stressing what you're great at. I think that's what we need to see more of, so that, you know, these women don't self-select out and lose opportunities.
Perfect. Well said. So we wouldn't have a panel discussion if we wouldn't talk about COVID-19. So Maggie, a question for yourself. How is COVID-19 redefining leadership? What kind of opportunities would replace the current opportunities that may evaporate? What will be future like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, COVID is definitely dominating a lot of conversations right now. And, you know, in addition to being a global health crisis, you know, as a result of that, we also have an economic crisis. And there is also the racial justice movement that is boiling over the top. So there are a lot of things that are happening, and organizations are really thinking about, you know, how do you navigate through this transformation? And many of the panelists and yourself, Anshu, already talk about the importance of technology. Is absolutely being put in the forefront from a digital transformation perspective. And you see that companies or industries that are so far behind in their transformation is being basically left behind. So from a leadership perspective, leaders need to be ever more agile. You have to try new things because the old playbook is no longer working. So when we think about at the beginning of the pandemic, you know, a lot of leaders and the CEOs are thinking about how do we shift the workforce to a virtual environment so that the employees are safe? And then also, how do we support our customers so that we can continue to ensure that their operations or they're taken care of? And then the other traits that I see really being magnified are, you know, the ability to transform businesses fast, because there's no time to waste. And every organizations and companies are thinking about how do they support their consumers, how do they support their customers. Second is authentic leadership. Not only being true to yourself, but what does your company's purpose, what is the purpose of the organization? How is that going to help the overall society? And what does that leader stand for? More and more we see that not only employees, but investors and customers are looking for leaders to take a stand on very important topics. So those are the things that I see are very critical leadership traits. And last but not least, empathy. Sophia, you talk about, we don't want to see women dropping out. And in the latest, women in the workplace report coming out from Lean In and McKinsey, there is a data point that is kind of scary, saying that 1 out of 4 women are considering either dropping out or downshifting their career. And so therefore, the empathy from the leadership is so critical, not only about, how the work is done, but thinking about all the things, especially women, have to do in addition to, work. You also have the homework and managing, the home life as well. So those are the things that I really see magnifying in this post-COVID world.
Well, that's very interesting. That's very interesting that the dropout, I have not seen this McKinsey report. Maybe we need to read this. That's alarming, actually.
It's very alarming, yes.
That's alarming. So next question would be, now we talked about what we have done. Let's learn from our mistakes. So what is that one mistake you witnessed women leaders make more frequently than others, or you have made yourself? And that's that one behavior or trait that you have seen derail us from becoming those, leaders, those top C-suite executives. So let's start from Sophia here.
So, how everybody has performance rating and, you generally know you're great at some things and you're not so great at other things, and it's somewhat relative. So I've always said to myself, right, I execute really well. I'm very detail oriented. I'm very analytical. Those are always my strengths. Until one year, a mentor said to me, wait a second, your weaknesses are there's above the line and below the line. So I wasn't assertive. I didn't love getting on panels, speaking to hundreds of people. And so I never really said, oh, well, my communication skills are always weaker. And I use that word. He's like, that's not good enough. You need to make sure all your skills, all your key skills are at some bar, right? Let's say you call an A. And that changed my view of how I was thinking about myself. No longer should I keep saying that I have strengths and weaknesses, but I need to make sure I really focus on working on my weaknesses. And that was when I decided, right, being shy is not an excuse. Not asking for what I need is not an excuse, and really leaning into working on what were my weaknesses. And so I think it was just a shift in how I thought about my own development areas, and just leaning in and working on those. I wish I knew that earlier, until one year someone woke me up to that.
Mm-hmm. And Luann, what do you think? Give your perspective.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that potential women leaders make is in trying to be men and not really digging deep and appreciating the sort of natural born characteristics that women have over men. Men are great leaders too, don't get me wrong. But, to Sophia's point in terms of, we tend to be more empathetic, more sympathetic, more intuitive. We know that we have to be a little bit up on our game, but lead as a female with all of the strengths that a female has, because I think we've all probably been there, maybe had seen a woman leader in our organization who, just was acting like somebody else versus, just taking a deep breath. So that would be my thing. We should be proud of our strengths in terms of being females, and then individually, of course, correct whatever. But we have some skills that make us better leaders in some cases. So those involved, yeah. That would be what I say. Be yourself.
Yeah, be yourself. Perfect. And Maggie, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think one big one that I want to ask everyone on this webinar to really look into yourselves is go for the big job. Because I see time and time again, the men would raise their hand when they're 50 or 60% ready for a role that is open up or going to be open up, where women, they tend to look at their CV or their resume and say, wait, I only have 80% of the qualities of what the job description is asking for. They don't apply for jobs until they're 95 to 100% qualified. And I say you should go for the big jobs, like when you're 50 to 60%, so that you are at the same level as the guys competing for those jobs, because there are so many of your transferable skills that you may not be thinking about. So I would say that, when you see a job that you're like, wow, I don't know if I can make it. If you feel like this is the job that you want, go for it. Because what is the worst thing that can happen? They say no. Like, so that if that's the worst thing, like, it's not a bad thing at all. So go for the big jobs.
That's very well said, Maggie, very well said. And I give you my personal experience, and I've learned from that. That's why I want to give it here, is when I was told to become the lead for all the architects, software architects in IBM, and I was myself one architect, and Lauren States, who has been my mentor and an amazing woman, she said, you are ready to lead the architects. And I was like, no, Lauren, I don't know whether I'll be able to do it. This is too big of a job and all. And she told me once, and I have taken that so much to heart. She told me that, Missy, you get an opportunity once, you take it or leave it. You are the loser here. Oh, and I always remember that. So very well said, Maggie, very well said. Okay, let's go to our next question. That is, Luan, you have started various companies and now the CEO. What is the best way to promote your work and network? It's all about your brand. How are you known? So how do you make your brand?
Yes, this is a great question. Well, I'll start with, you get what you give. So I think that women need to be more supportive of each other in general, for example. And I'm a big fan of organizations that invest in women, like Springboard, which is a female accelerator program, the oldest and most elite one, of which I was an alumna, but started by mentors of mine, Kay Koplovitz, who, by the way, started the Sci-Fi Channel and USA Networks. I mean, there are women that are doing amazing things for other women that you don't know about. Seek those women out because they have been at it for a very long time. Get involved, see how you can help. I mean, so I think it's just a karma thing, at first, whether you're CEO or not, is get involved, lock arms, try to help other females of all races to improve and accelerate their careers. And in doing that, opportunities then start to open up. I mean, my mother, excuse my language, used to say, if you hang out with shit, you become shit. Well, the converse is also true, right? You hang out with really great people who have good hearts and are ambitious, and then you're going to be there too. And what ends up happening is you kind of lift each other up, and then all of a sudden, you are 25 or 26 years old speaking on a panel of 25, 26-year-old women who are kicking ass, because you're helping, it comes back around. Social media, I'm going to be 50 years old on November 4th. So I have other people do my social media except for LinkedIn. So I'm not big on the social media. I am big though in, as we talked about earlier, getting your voice out, helping, and in return, you'll get good stuff back.
Oh, great answer. Maggie, to yourself, a question now. In my view, mentors and sponsors are very critical in helping aspiring women to gain perspective and connections, and we need to take much larger roles in this. So it's a two-pronged question. One, what's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor? Because that's very important to differentiate. And the next is, as an Asian American woman in technology, what will be the mutually beneficial mentoring relationship? And as Maggie, yourself, you run a executive coaching company. Give some examples from your experience, how it has helped.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so important to understand the difference between mentors and sponsors, because we need both. Mentors are people that we want to learn from. They have competencies, they have experiences that we admire, that we want to learn. So for example, earlier in my career, I wanted to become a great people manager. So I I found myself a mentor who is someone I absolutely admire as a people manager, and I learned from her on how to become a great manager. And sponsors are the people who are more senior to you, and also they know your work and have the political capital to help you open doors to new opportunities. And sure, you just talk about the example in your career of someone really help you to open up that opportunity for you and encourage you to take on that opportunity. And those are the sponsors. The easiest one to see are your managers or your manager's manager, your skip level managers. Those are most likely your direct sponsors. But your sponsors could be people in other part of the organizations that you work with. But they may be the people who, in closed door conversations about promotions, about new jobs, they may be speaking on your behalf that you don't even know about. So having both mentors and sponsors are very critical. When it comes to about building that mentoring or sponsorship relationships, the first thing that is very important is you are the driver of those relationships. You have to be the one to seek out for mentors, seek out for sponsors, and set those agenda. With mentors, be very clear about what are the things that you want to learn from them. And with sponsors, tell them about your career goals. Tell them about where you want to go so that they can help think about what are the opportunities that they can help you open doors, connecting with network, and also potentially giving you opportunities to grow as well.
I agree totally with you. I totally agree. And I think one of the key takeaways from what Maggie just said is if you don't have one, please go and find a sponsor and a mentor for in your company. So well said, Maggie. So perfect. This has been a great panel discussion. Thank you so much to all the panelists to have this so much insightful knowledge given to all the team which is listening here. So the three main aims from this session, not aims, but one thing, this was very inspirational and motivational. Take something back and practice it and learn from this panel or the other panels that we are having, experienced women, that how they have shaped their careers and how they have become what they are today. I'll say at the end of the panel, be ambitious and fight for those C-suite positions in your organization. No one will give them to you. So now we have an amazing, if there are any question and answers, do we have any question and answers coming? Not as yet, but please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A chat. But and now we have an amazing flute performance. Now Mitzi and Nunanki, who is a freelance flutist and a teaching assistant based in New York City, and is also on the faculty of Brooklyn Conservatory and of Music. I would give it to her, and please, Mitzi, take it over.
Hi, is it working?
Yes, yes.
Great. I'll get started. 1 second. Sorry. Technical difficulties. All right.
Oh, thank you so much, Mitzi. What an amazing performance. What an amazing,
Thank you.
thank you for taking us through that. Perfect. Okay, there are no questions. I'm wondering, again, we are such introverts. We spoke so much about it, but we have no questions. Anyway, firstly, I wanted to thank the panelists, Sophia, Maggie, and Luan, and Mitzi for making this such an amazing session. And on behalf of AABCD, thank you for participating with us today. Thank you to our sponsors. And I hope you will tune in for the following series 2 and 3. That is Meet the Millennial Entrepreneurs and on October 21st. And the evolution of technology continues. What is the future of technology in 2025, which will be held on October 28th. You can find the details and how to register on the AABDC website. So with that, if there are no more questions, and if somebody wants to say anything, any parting comments from the panelists, otherwise we'll close it. Perfect. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining. Thank you so much.